There's something about the way the chase ended that has left a bad taste in people's mouths. They want the poem interpreted. They want to see photos or a video of the exuberant finder at the spot celebrating. People have had to be reminded that many searchers said they would tell no one, and many other searchers have said they wouldn't say a word for several weeks or months. Some plan to write books, and some books only work if you don't know the ending. Nevertheless, many are disgruntled and complain in forums and in comment sections online. There's another group kvetching about the chase, for lack of a better word. I'm reminded of something a professor of mine said to the class on the first day of the semester. He said, "Before every lecture, you'll be assigned about 100 pages, which is essential preparation. I'll be conducting this class using the Socratic method, and all I ask is that if you didn't prepare, don't participate." By raising your hand and offering your ideas, you won't just be adding nothing, you'll be pooling ignorance. We want to avoid pooling ignorance. Recently, with the spike in media attention, a lot of folks are hearing about Forrest Fenn and his treasure hunt for the first time. This isn't stopping them from raising their hands and offering up their ideas to those of us who have been at this for several years. It's more than a little frustrating that some of the loudest voices these days are the most uninformed. And so an old theory has cropped up, which I thought I would speak to here. It's simply that this whole thing has been a con, a way for Forrest to make money from book sales. Of course, this isn't a new theory. It's been around the entire time. In fact, it goes back to before the chase started. Forrest anticipated this allegation, and he took steps to deal with it before the chase was even announced. Let's investigate this. First of all, a few words about writing books. The average U.S. nonfiction book is now selling less than 250 copies per year and less than 3,000 copies over its lifetime. A typical book author barely makes more than minimum wage, and most writers don't get rich writing books. Actually, most writers don't even earn an unsupplemented living writing books. Another way to put this is that 99% of authors have to do something else to make a living. Yes, there's the 1%, the Grishams and the J.K. Rowlings that can write books and nothing else, but they are the select few. The vast majority can't do that. So the first thing we can say is that this plan, if this was his plan, is a terrible plan from the start. Second, it's nonsensical and unnecessary because Forrest was already wealthy. In 1972, Forrest moved his family from Lubbock to Santa Fe, learned the art business, and found great success. By 1982, according to National Geographic, his gallery was making $6 million a year, which is more than $15 million a year in today's money. He ran it for a total of 16 very profitable years and did very well for himself. The gallery building itself has about 40 rooms, plus it sits on about an acre of prime real estate in Santa Fe's art district with a huge sculpture garden in back. Considering annual revenue, inventory, and the property itself, I wouldn't be surprised if the total sale value in 1988 was $30 million, which would be $65 million in today's money. Add that to his already sizable fortune, and it doesn't make sense for him to be looking for a get-rich scheme at age 80. Third, he went about it all wrong. Self-publishing and only selling his book out of one local bookstore. DIY publishing is all well and good, but it's not a path to fame and fortune. And selling your book only through one store would never be anyone's plan in a million years if their intention is to make a fortune. When Forrest started gaining national attention, he should have made a beeline for a big publishing house like HarperCollins. He should have wanted his memoir on the shelves of every Barnes & Noble in the country. But he never did any of that. Fourth, this scheme involves terrible math if you're hoping to make a profit. But for the sake of argument, let's say Forrest hatched this plan to get wealthy as an author. Collected Works charged $35 per book, which would include their markup. The way it works is publishers and retailers agree on a sales price, and then the retailer purchases their inventory at a discount, which is normally 50%. I think Forrest's first printing was 1,000 copies, and let's say he sold them all to the bookstore for the typical discount of 50%, so that's $17.50 each. Forrest has now grossed $17,500. But let's look at his expenses leading up to this transaction. He hired photographer Addison Doty and artist Alan Polt for the 20 or so hand drawings. I assume he paid them about $1,000 each. He hired a creative team, Bruno Advertising and Design to handle creative decisions, and Susan Caldwell for design. I have to imagine he paid them at least $4,000. Then he had the book printed at Starline Printing in Albuquerque, which probably cost in the neighborhood of $10,000. And lastly, even though he could have had the book printed locally, he had the printed pages shipped to Roswell Bookbinding in Phoenix, a custom bindery that specializes in restoration and is known for its superior craftsmanship. I think they would have charged him at least the same. Our price per unit is right at $30. Now, Forrest could have saved a lot of money on pre-press production, printing, and binding, but he worked with professionals on his little memoir, and then did crazy things like a full-color dust jacket with gloss lamination, a faux linen case wrap with a foil stamp on the spine and cover, custom end sheets with crossover images, 100-pound silk paper, over-sewing the signatures, and a 4-color press even though he only has 1 color photograph in the whole memoir, and only 2 pages with red ink. This is not your dad's self-published book. This little memoir is extravagant. It has a homemade feel, but then it was clearly put in the hands of professionals, from start to finish, from the creative decisions to the custom binding at Roswell. Rather than a get-rich scheme, this just looks like a wealthy person having fun with his money. For Forrest to break even, he should have sold his book to Collected Works for $30 per unit, and then we would expect that they would in turn charge double that, $60 retail. Instead, Collected Works only charged $35, which suggests that he sold his book to Collected Works for $17.50, which means that this man who ran his own successful business for almost 2 decades lost $12,500 on his first foray into the business of getting rich through publishing. Another way to look at this is that Forrest lost $12.50 every time a book was sold. Now, you might say repeated printings are going to be cheaper per unit because a lot of these line items for overhead were single transactions. And you're right. We can remove photography costs, payment for the hand drawings, and the entire creative team. You simply resubmit a work order to the printer, and they print the books. So now that's $20,000 per 1,000 units printed. Price per unit goes down to $20 for each subsequent printing, in which case Forrest is only losing $2.50 per book. As a businessman, this would have thrilled Forrest. This is a move in the right direction. His get-rich scheme is going great. This has all been for the sake of argument. This theory directly contradicts Forrest's stated desire to avoid the accusation that he was out for money through sales. He told the Albuquerque Journal in 2013, "I gifted all the books to the Collected Works bookstore in Santa Fe, so no one would be tempted to say the treasure story is a hoax to make money on book sales. I don't get any money from the sales, not even my publishing costs." In 2018, Forrest answered a question about this on Mysterious Writings. He was asked if he was profit neutral. Forrest said the 10th printing of his memoir was almost underway, and that to date they had sold 40,500 copies. He finishes, "So to answer your question, I'm out the cost of printing the first editions of The Thrill of the Chase." After that, he handed over production to Collected Works. They handled the reprints, they handled distribution, and took a profit. So we can estimate about 50,000 books sold by now. And again, for the sake of argument, let's say Forrest somehow got sweetheart deals in perpetuity from everyone in the chain, No one charged him anything ever, and Collected Works, for some reason, was willing to funnel all proceeds back to the author, okay? So, for the sake of argument, at $35 retail, that's 1.75 million gross earnings over 10 years. That comes to Forrest making less than $200,000 per year. But this strains credulity. Why would everyone in the chain go along with a decade of lies? Why are we bending over backwards to theorize about how Forrest ran a con when it doesn't make sense from start to finish? It's more likely that a very wealthy individual has donated books. Why is that so hard for some people to believe? The next time you hear someone make this allegation, you can confidently refute them and tell them they're ignorant and they don't know what they're talking about. Clearly, these people have never published a book. They don't work in this field, and they haven't even bothered to do a little research before slandering someone. It's not just hurtful, it's lazy. What kind of person publicly attacks another's reputation without giving the matter just a little thought? If you were the man who sold the largest art gallery in Santa Fe in 1988 for $20 or $30 million, wouldn't you indulge a little extravagance now and then? Have some fun with your money? Of course you would. And if you were Forrest Fenn, you might even take a small fortune out into the Rocky Mountains and hide it, just for fun. Yeah, put your hand down. You haven't done your homework.